Welcome to Beginning with Moses, Discovering Jesus in the Bible. I'm Pastor Gary Schulte. Welcome back to Beginning with Moses. If Judges 17 and 18 showed the cycle breaking down, Judges 19 shows what happens when it's gone entirely. The pattern that once restrained Israel, grace, sin, judgment, repentance, is no longer functioning at all. There is no return, no correction, no turning back. What follows is not confusion, but collapse. This chapter doesn't raise questions. It reveals what happens when nothing remains to stop the downward spiral of sin. Once again, we hear the refrain, "In those days there was no king in Israel." By now, this is more than context. It is explanation. There is no authority rooted in Yahweh's word, no voice correcting the people. And without that authority, the cycle cannot restart. Grace is not sought, sin is not confronted, judgment is not feared, and repentance is not even considered as an option. The story begins with a Levite and his concubine, and even here the disorder is evident. The relationship lacks stability and reflects a departure from covenant faithfulness. A Levite with a concubine? This is not simply a personal issue. It is a reflection of a culture that has already drifted. And with the cycle collapse, there is no mechanism left to restore what is broken or bring healing to fractured relationships. The Levite goes to bring her back, and there's a period of hospitality. On the surface, it looks like reconciliation, but there is no repentance, no correction, no restoration of what was lost. This is appearance without substance. The cycle would require repentance, but here nothing of the sort takes place, leaving the relationship fundamentally unchanged beneath the surface. The delay in leaving seems harmless, even kind, but Judges consistently shows that collapse is not driven by one dramatic moment, but by many small, unexamined decisions. Without the cycle functioning, there is no correction even at this level. The path forward continues unchecked, and what seems insignificant becomes part of a larger trajectory toward disaster. The Levite and his concubine avoid a foreign city and instead go to Gibeah, an Israelite town. That choice should have meant safety. This is supposed to be the people of Yahweh. But that identity is long ago eroded. What should be safe is no longer safe because the people are no longer shaped by the truth that once distinguished them from the nations. They sit in the city square and no one takes them in. That detail signals something profound. Hospitality was part of Israel's covenant life and a visible expression of Yahweh's character toward the stranger and the vulnerable. Its absence is not just social failure, it is theological breakdown. The people no longer reflect the compassion, care, and responsibility that once marked them. What was once instinctive has now disappeared, and not one even seems to notice. An old man finally offers them lodging, but he is not originally from Gibeah. The one who acts rightly is an outsider. This reversal is telling. Faithfulness is no longer embedded in the community. It appears sporadically and unexpectedly. What should be normal has become rare, and what should be rare has become common. What happens next mirrors Genesis 19. Men of the city surround the house and demand to abuse the visitor. This is not subtle. The text is drawing a direct line. Israel has become what it was meant to drive out. The behavior that once marked the nations now defines the people of Yahweh themselves. Israel was meant to reflect Yahweh's character to the world. But now there's no difference between Israel and the nations. The boundary has disappeared completely. And when that happens, the covenant identity itself collapses, leaving the people indistinguishable from those they were called to be set apart from. The host attempts to deflect the violence, but his proposed solution is itself deeply broken. This is not righteousness, it is compromised damage control. Even attempts to restrain evil are shaped by the same distortion. The moral framework itself is gone, leaving no clear standard to guide even well-intentioned responses. When truth disappears, people don't stop acting, they simply act without clarity. And even their efforts to do good become entangled with the very evil they oppose. What follows is both tragic and devastating. The text presents it without exaggeration, and we should receive it the same way. This is not something to dramatize, it's something to recognize. This is what happens when sin is no longer restrained by truth, and when the cycle that once corrected the people has completely disappeared. The night passes with no intervention. No one steps in. No one resists. That silence is revealing. It shows that the collapse is not limited to a few individuals, it is systemic. The structures that once resisted evil are no longer present, leaving sin to proceed without interruption. When morning comes, nothing is repaired. The damage remains. There is no attempt to restore, no movement toward repentance. The cycle is gone, and without it, there's no pathway back. What remains is only the reality of what has happened. The Levites' response is striking in its lack of grief. There's no lament, no visible sorrow, no recognition of the weight of what has occurred. Instead, there is movement, action without reflection. This reveals something deeper than the event itself. It shows how far the heart has drifted from its ability to respond rightly. When the cycle collapses, not only does behavior change, the inner life becomes hardened, unable to feel what it should, and unable to turn back even when confronted. When the sin persists without correction, it dulls the conscience. What should produce horror becomes something that can be processed and moved past. This is not just sin, it's desensitization. The ability to respond rightly has been eroded over time, leaving people unable to recognize the full weight of evil. The Levite, in his unchecked wrath, cuts his concubine up into 12 pieces and sends the pieces throughout Israel, forcing the nation to confront what has happened. The act is shocking, but it serves a purpose. It reveals reality. The nation cannot ignore what it has become. What was hidden beneath the surface is now fully exposed. The people respond, of course, with shock, utter shock, saying nothing like this has happened before. But their reaction stops there. There is recognition, but not repentance. And without repentance, the cycle cannot restart, leaving the nation stuck in this horrendous condition. Yuck. This is not isolated, it is systemic. What happens in Gibeah reflects the entire nation. The issue is not location, it's identity. Israel has lost who it is, and without the cycle functioning, there's no way to recover that identity. Now we can say it clearly. Grace is not sought, sin is not confronted, judgment is not guiding, repentance is absent. The cycle that once preserved Israel has collapsed entirely. Nothing remains to restrain the fall, and what follows will only deepen the crisis. This is not a temporary failure either. It's a systemic condition where the mechanisms of correction no longer exist. There is no judge, no voice, no intervention. That silence is intentional. It reveals the vacuum at the center of Israel's life. Without leadership rooted in Yahweh, the people are left to themselves, and this is the ugly result of that absence. Judges 19 forces a question. Who can restore this? Not simply correct behavior, but restore identity. Israel doesn't just need reform, it needs a king who can reestablish truth and reshape the people from within, something no human effort has accomplished. The problem is not merely external disorder, but internal corruption that cannot be corrected by law alone, but requires transformation at the level of the heart. Christ is that king. Where Israel failed, he remains faithful. Where sin brings destruction, he brings redemption. Judges 19 reveals the depth of the problem, but Christ reveals the fullness of the solution. He doesn't merely restart the cycle. He fulfills it completely and brings it to true restoration. The King has come. In episode 86, we see the people finally respond, start to wake up a little bit. But unfortunately, the cycle is not restored. It misfires. Stay with me. God bless.
They chose the safer road that night, avoided strangers, stayed with their own kind, An Israelite town beneath the stars, surely safer than the world outside. But the lamps burned low in Gibeah, and no one opened up their door. The covenant people sat in silence, while compassion died upon the floor. The walls were still called Israel, the people still knew God's name, but names alone cannot preserve a heart already changed. When Sodom got 'em, nobody saw the fall. Not because it happened suddenly, because it happened slow. When Sodom got 'em, the boundary disappeared. The city of the promise started looking like the world it feared. When Sodom got 'em, they didn't even know the collapse had been growing long before it showed. An old man offered shelter there, a stranger showing covenant care. The faithful now were exceptions, not the shape of the community. Then Genesis returned at midnight, a story nobody should repeat. The text doesn't shout or dramatize, it simply lets the darkness speak. And every broken compromise that seemed so small before had gathered into something monstrous standing at the door. When Sodom got 'em, nobody saw the fall. Not because it happened suddenly, because it happened slow. When Sodom got 'em, the boundary disappeared. The city of the promise started looking like the world it feared. No judge, no prophet, no king, no voice. Silence where correction should have stood. No repentance, no turning, no healing, no return. Just the echo of choices made 1,000 times before. And maybe that's the horror, not that evil appeared, but that nobody remembered why it was evil anymore. Shock without repentance, recognition without change. A nation staring at the wreckage without knowing how it came. The cycle had collapsed, the brakes were gone, and gravity did the rest. When Sodom got 'em, the people lost their name. The nations they were meant to change had changed them just the same way. Sodom got 'em, the darkness took the throne, until another king arrived to call the wanderers home. When Sodom got 'em, everything fell apart. But Christ came where judges couldn't, to rebuild the human heart. No king in Israel until the king came.